Good day. We want to explain what HOC is, higher order components, what they are in React.js. Now, with the advent of custom hooks, HOC has become unpopular. Like custom hooks has replaced most of those things we used to do with HOC. But then, notwithstanding, uh, if you're using a class-based component, you will need to learn HOC. But even in functional components, you can still make use of HOC, although for most of those things you may want to use HOC for. You can make use of custom hooks. So I'll still make another video on custom hooks. So this video is basically on HOC. And we're going to be using this HOC with functional components. You can use this class-based components if you want to. It's still the same logic. So let's start. Why then do we need HOC? Let's start from there. HOC, higher order component, allows us to reuse logic in different components. It makes usable of logic possible. Remember, dry, don't repeat yourself. So with HOC, we don't want to repeat codes. So let's give you an instance. I'll create a component folder. Inside this components folder, I'll create two files. Then I'll create another file. So these two files are components. So let's import that. Then let's create our component. Then let's return. Let's see. Inside this place, I can say I am the second component. Then let's export it out. So we have these components. Let's copy everything here and paste it inside the first component. And just change the name to first. Let's export first. So let's bring both of them into our app. So let's go to the browser and see our result there. So we have these two components. Now, what we want to do now is this. We want to create two login buttons. Sorry, two buttons. One will be to log in, the other will be to log out. So once I click on login, it will set a value in the local storage. Once I click on log out, it will set a different value. For instance, when we click on login, it will set 1 in local storage. When we click on log out, it will set 0 in local storage. So whenever we want to load any of these two components, we want to first check if the value in local storage is 1 or 0. If it is 1, then load that component. If it is 0, then display you are not logged in yet, or something like that. So let's do that together. We're going to create two buttons. One will be to log in, the other will be to log out. Then we're going to route. So when we decide to route to this first component, then if you are logged in, it will allow us to visit the component. But if you are not logged in, it's going to display a message. Maybe you are not logged in yet, so it's not going to display the content of this component. Same to the second one also. So let's do that. So bring in in this project, we already have React Router DOM installed. So let's bring it in. So wrap this with browser router. Then So we have this. Down to our app.js, let's bring in our routes. Within the routes, let's bring in the routes. Then let's see, when we get to the landing page, let's just display a message. This can display the path is this element. This will display this message for us. We'll just display this landing page. Okay. We can now close our route. Now for the when we go to slash first, we want to display this first component. When we go to slash second, we display the second component first. So display, let me just cut this out of this place and then it's here. So then copy, paste, change it to second, then move this. So the way our application is at the moment is this. When we are on the landing page, it will display landing page. And when we go to slash first, it will display the content of the first component. Oh, when we go to slash second, it will display the content of the second component. So let's test that. So we have this. We have this. Instead of doing that on the browser like this, let's add tags, anchor tags that we can click on to navigate to that component. So let's put it here. We can create a new component and we can call that the navbar. So I'll just come here, copy, then go to the navbar, paste, change this to second, outside the navbar, So I want to have the link, bring in link from your React Out add-on, and link to slash first. When you click on this, it's going to link to slash first, so you can say first. So this will go to that of the first. Then let's break it so that there will be gap between the two of them. Between right. Okay. So now we should import this navbar in this place. Okay. So at the browser now, cannot find this. Oh. Okay. Oh, sorry. Just show that. Okay. Oh, we name this. We can just come here and change this to. Okay. Oh, let's create space between these two. We can go to this place and then. So we have this. We can go to the first component or to the second component. Then let's also be able to go to the landing page. Let's say our landing page. Let's go back to our navbar. Then we put another link. Then we can call this home. So when we click on this, it will take us to the landing page. Okay. Have this. Then next, we want to put two buttons. Now one will be to log in, another one will be to log out. And if you are logged in, then you'll be able to visit the first and the second pages. But if you are not logged in, we won't be able to. So let's do that together. So I'll click on this button. Let's put buttons, two buttons. We can call this the login. Then put another button. And let's call this the logout button. So on click of this, we are going to call like a function called login. Const login button equals to this. So all these buttons should just do for us is to say local storage dot set item. So we can call it login status. Yes, we can say my login status anything. So this is set it to 1. Then we get another button called logouts. And this will set it to 0. So when we click on this, it will set it to 1, and when we click on this, it will set it to 0. Let's attach the two buttons here. Okay, so we have these two buttons. But since the two buttons are doing almost the same thing, we can just call it toggle login. Let's change the name of this button to toggle login. But I won't have to create two buttons. So while calling on toggle login, we can send parameters to it and say toggle login. So here you can send 1, then here you can send 0. So we save it here. You can call it status. Then this is now the value of status. I think this is better. So I'll click on this. It's going to call on this function, and it's going to send the value here as the value of status. So, and set it in local storage. And if you click on this, it will send 0 as the value of status and set it in local storage. Next is this. We want to ensure that when we decide to visit any of these two components, we first go to local storage, check if we are logged in, like if the value of this is 1 or 0. If it is 1, display the content of that component. If it is 0, don't display it. So let's do that in the first component. We can say, put an if statement. Let's first go to local storage and save the value. Let we can say login status equals to local storage dot get item and get my login status. So we're getting it from local storage. We can now say if my login status, if login status now okay, if login status if is equal to 1, then we want to return this component. Else return something else. So return another component. Remember, this is a component, and the component returns GSX. So you can return another GSX here. You are not locked in yet. Good. You are not locked in yet. So we have this for the first. We want to do the same thing in the second component. So we can just copy this part. And go to the second component. Then put it here. And say I forgot to copy the local style this line, so let's copy it also. And let's put it here. So what you're doing here is that if login status, if the person is logged in, that is if it is 1, then you want to do this. But if it is not 1, if it is 0, then it's going to tell you are not logged in yet. So let's see if it's working fine. So at the moment, we are currently on the second, but it's telling us you are not logged in yet. That's because you are yet to log in. So if I click on login now, we can now go to any of the 2 components. It's fine. But if we log out, we won't be able to visit these components again. You won't be able to. But then if you observe something, we are repeating logic. The logic you have here is same logic you have here. So when you see yourself receiving repeating logic across different components, then you can think about HOC. Let's now use HOC to undo it. So we're going to create a new file, and we can call it. It's a convention that you start the names of HOC with like with. HOC is a common practice that your other components other components starts with. So with something, we can call this one with login since we want to use it to manage login. Just okay. As we proceed, you understand 1 or 2 things also. But whenever you let me quickly bring it in. Same way, whenever you want to create cost hooks, we've been using use states, we've used use effect and all of that. If you notice something, their names start with use. Same way, hooks, whenever you are creating hooks, you start with use. And whenever you are creating HOC, you start with login.js. Now, let's see what HOC is. HOC is a function. Let's start with this. This function is a parameterized function. A normal function takes a value here, or it expects a value. Let's see, if I want to call on this my func, a normal JavaScript function expects like a value here. This value can be a number, it can be a string, it can be anything. But when you're dealing with HOC, the value that will be sent as the value of this val, or as the value of whatever you put here, is expected to be a component. I come again. HOC is a function that expects a component as its own argument. He's not expecting a string, he's not expecting a number and all of that. He's expecting that its argument should be a component. So instead of sending 5, we are going to be sending a whole component as the value of this. So you're going to be sending a component. Const, let's say this func, let's just call it this func, equals to, let's clear this out. So come return now this is a component. A component returns a JSX, right? So this HOC, we now expect that you send this func as its own parameter here. So we are going to now send this down. So in order to be able to do that, let's place this down here. Then we can now pass this func. This is how HOC looks like. Let's put everything on a single line. So this my func here is HOC. What is expected is that it expects that whenever you are calling on the HOC, you send a whole component as its child. That's what it's expecting here. So the value of var, this var here now, will be this component. Let's proceed. Of course, you can shorten this also if you want to. You can just cut all of this. And comment this out and send it here directly. It's still the same thing. But note that this is a component now, and you are sending it as the value of this val. Let's move on. Aside that, an HOC, after receiving a component, an HOC now returns a new component. HOC takes a component as its child, and also it returns a new component. What does that mean? Inside this place, this HOC will now return a new component. Return a component. Let's create the component to make it easier to understand. Const new component equals to, again, a component returns JSX. So this is HO, okay. This is this new component. You can now return new component. So this HOC is taking a component as its child and is returning a new component. You are returning this function, and since the function itself is returning a JSX like this, so you're actually returning a component. That is the simple explanation of HOC. A function that takes a component and returns a new component. Of course, you can also see it shortened like this, maybe online as you do research. You can see it's shortened like this. Instead of saying this, you can just say something like this. Return this, it's also valid. So we won't need this again. So what you're doing here is this is a function taking a component, returning a new component. Let's move on. Now, as you can see, we are not making use of this var. Well, we can. As we proceed, you're going to see how we can do that. So the idea of HOC is that the shared logic, the code that you are sharing, the logic that you are sharing will be inside this HOC. It's going to be inside this HOC. So how this HOC, And it's a common practice that you call, since you're expecting that this will be a component, it's a common practice that you call it, that you start with capital letter. Wrapped component. You can call it wrapped component, but just start with capital letter. Starting with capital letter makes us to quickly know that, oh, this is not just any value, but instead it's a component. And of course, use a name that one can easily understand. So by saying this, oh, I know that, oh, this is HOC. And of course, start with width. I can call this with login now. Remember, it's a good practice that you start the names of your HOC with width. That's convention. So let's return it. Export. Let's export it. By exporting it, you can make use of it elsewhere. So we are exporting this component. Let's bring it to our first.js. Let's first use it here. For now, we just remember it's a function. And when you trigger a function like this, let's come back here. When I call on this login like this with login, and I trigger it like this, I put a parenthesis at the front, it's going to execute the codes inside that function. Good. That's what we want to do in this first.js. Bring in your with login. So we've imported it. Then remember, HOC expects a O component. So you are placing this first, everything inside is first, as a child of this with login. So this component will now be sent as the value of this wrapped component. Then this with login is now returning I am the new component. So when you get to this screen, you won't see the content of this first again. You're going to see whatever this HOC returns, whatever it returns. And since it is returning, I am the new component. That's what you will see on the screen. Whatever, just understand that whenever you use HOC like this, it's whatever this HOC returns. Let's first try that so that we go. So you can see I am the new component. So whether you are logged in or not, it doesn't matter now. When you go to first, whether you are logged in or not, you always see I am the new component. Let me log in, go to second and go back to first. We still see I am the new component. So the login status doesn't matter for now. As you can see that whatever the HOC returns is what you see on the screen. Let's now bring this logic here. The logic that you are sharing across different places, that's what you take to your HOC. So I'll cut all of this out of this component. Let's cut it out and bring it into my HOC. So this is my HOC. We have this. Now, this we now check. What we want to do is, okay, before we do that, let me quickly explain something that will make us understand the next thing we're about to do. Instead of displaying this I am the new component, I can also choose to display this wrapped component. I can choose to display the wrapped component. In this case, the wrapped component is this first, the wrapped component is this first component now, is this first component. So instead of displaying this, I can choose to display the wrapped component. So we still going to build as though we weren't using HOC. It will work exactly the way it was before. You can see I am the new component, I am the first component. If I log out and I try to visit first component, it tells you are not logged in yet. It tells us you are not logged in yet. So understand the way it works. You bring HOC in, you trigger it, you pass the components to it. Whatever the HOC returns is what you see on the screen. If you wish to, you can now display that same component. Now then, if we are doing the same thing, why are we then using HOC? Why are we stressing ourselves? Remember, we said it is to share logic. So what we're going to do is this. Let's first write simple if statement here. We can now say, let's get a variable A equals to 1. So we can now say if A equals to 1. Then display this component, return this. So it will return that component, else return anything. Let's just return the text. Anything. Keep in mind that whatever this HOC returns is what you see on the screen. So of course, since A is 1, then it will return that same component out. But if A is not 1, if I change the value of it to something else, then it will return this 1. So of course, we still see the same components. If I log in now, I should be able to visit first. I should be able to. Now, if I change the value of A to 2, then I'll see anything on the screen. I'll see that's why we have this anything. Let's move on. We cannot take advantage of this behavior by saying copy all of this. Okay, let's cut it out. Cut out all of it. Then bring it to your with login. Bring it here. Okay. Paste it. What are we doing wrong? Come in. Okay. Should be here. So we have this now. If the login status is 1, then we can now return that component. Return the content of the first component. Else, return you are not logged in yet. So when we visit this page, return wrapped component. In this case, last component is the same as the first component. Here, when we call on this with login, we are passing this first. So it's going to display the value of that component is now that first component. So if the login status is 1, then it will return that wrapped component. But if the login status is not 1, it's going to return you are not logged in yet. So this is same as saying return first component. Next is let's make this return the contents of it. We can say use return I am the first component. So let's see how it works. When we decide to visit this first we call on with login and it will pass the first component to it. The first component becomes the value of this wrapped. Then it will return this. So this new component that we want to return, we now run this if statement. If this is 1, then it will return the wrapped component. But if it is not 1, then it will return you are not logged in yet. So I am the first component. Now, if I log out and I try to visit the first component, you see you are not logged in yet. So the advantage of this is that we can now go to the second component and also make use of the same HOC. So with login, remember, essence of all of this is to reuse codes. So we can now delete all of this. So we have this. When we try to load the second component, it's a colon with login, and it will send the second component as a child or as a parameter to this with login. So that becomes the value of this wrapped component. Then it will return this inside this place. It will check the login status. Go to local storage, fetch it. If it is 1, it will return the wrapped component. Now in this case, the wrapped component is now the second component. So it's going to return the second component and we'll see it on the screen. Else, if that condition is not met, it will return this. you are not locked in yet. So with this, we are able to use the HOC to the use codes. We can now make use of it to the use code. HOC now helps us to the use code. You can also make use of HOC to reuse even states. Let's see how we can do that. Although I think in this case, the custom book will do it much better, but then you can make use of HOC to reuse states. What do I mean? This component that you are returning, this can actually send a value or a prop to this wrapped component. Let's make our code a bit cleaner. You can say const new component. Since it's a component, equals to this. Then when we are done, we can now return. It's still the same thing. Return new component. Oh, I didn't put in here. Still the same thing. So this is our HOC. It expects a child and it returns a new component. So this new component now, you can now choose, maybe you want it to return the child components, the parameter you are sending in, or you want it to return something else. But know that whatever this new component returns is what you see on the screen, is what you can see on the screen. So you can also send a prop down to the wrapped component. Let's see how to go about that. Imagine I want to, in the two components, I want to put values there, and I want to be able to increase the value I want to put there. We want to put value in the two components, then we want to be able to increase the value. So we can, let's say, this is what we want to achieve. Let var set var then put a button here. Then I can say one click. Then we want to increase this. Let's find a way to, let's display the var here somewhere, okay? So that we will see the value as we increase. I click on it. So unclick, call and set var. Then since you are using the initial value, return 5 plus 1. So when we click on this, it's going to increase the value of set var. So let's now say we want to do this thing inside the two components. I want to do it here. I also want to do it in this second component. State is not defined. Oh, we didn't import two states here. Okay. That should solve the bug now. Oh, we didn't put any text in the button. Increase. Increase. The second component then is not displaying the value. Let's see. Let's check it. Second, okay. We didn't put it in. Okay, this is 0. Let's top it to the next line. So that it becomes more obvious. Okay, let's do the same thing for the first component. Let's top it to the next line. So I'm currently inside the second component. I can increase this value if I want to. If I go to this first, I can also increase this value. Yeah. So that's what I want to be able to use logic. Like I want to be able to do this inside the two components. Now we are writing the same codes in the two components. Remember, part of the use of HLC is for you to be able to reuse logic. What we're going to do is we will now take this state out of this place and take it to HLC. What we want to do now is better in task-based components. If you want to do it in functional components, we advise that you make use of custom hooks. But of course, it is not impossible. You can still do it with this place. So let's see how we can do this. So we'll take this out of this place and we bring it to our HLC. Of course, in order to make use of use states, you bring in use states. Import React use states from React. Then bring this button also. Okay. For now, let's first send down the value. I'll remove these two buttons for now. Or let's comment it here and go to the first component and also comment it. Okay. So for a start, we want to display this value, this var. Where is it? This var from our HLC. We want to display it inside the wrapped component. That is the first thing. After we display it, we now see how to increase it. But for now, we want to display the var. So we have a state here. We want to send down the state to this place. You can send it down as props. You can say, create a prop here and let that be var. This can be any value. When you are sending out prop, it can be anything. It can be anything. But let the value be this var. So what you are doing here is this. You are sending down var as the value of value. Then you can now go to the child component and the structure hits. So we can now say display value. So in this case, value will now be whatever you are sending down. So the structure hits and display it. So we still have the same results. Let's remove this out of this place. We don't need this here again. Also in the first, okay, good. We don't need it here again. We have the same results. Next is let's add our button. The button is to increase this value. Just to increase it. So let's go back to our HLC and let's increase it. I want to increase it. So, well, you can send down this set var. And let's say the value is set var. You can, but I don't advise that you send these set states down. Instead, it's not something I like doing. To change the value of the states, it's always cool that you put it inside that same function. So you can create a new function entirely. You can call it increment. In fact, it's not a cool practice in React that you send this down directly as for. You still want to ensure that this set var is called inside the same component. The advantage of this is when you are debugging your codes, it makes debugging easier. So we are creating a function called increment. This increment will now be the one to call on set var. Set var previous return previous plus 1. So whenever we call an increment will be the one to call on set var, and it will now increase it by 1. Like I said, it's possible for you to call on your set var directly from this place, like this, by saying, sorry, then 5 plus 1. But then I just don't. It's not something that I just do. Like I don't like it like that. Whenever you are calling on this directly. Now, instead, I can send down increment. So we are creating a prop inside the wrapped component called increment. So that you understand the difference between the two, I will just call this another name, increase. So whenever we call an increase we call an increment, and increment we run the codes here. So let's go to the child component and get it there. Increase. So when we click on this button, you will call an increase. So increase will now be the one to call an increment over there. You're passing it down as props. Let's go to the second component, and I'll just paste, then put increase. And we have this now. Good. Now we can increase from this component, and we can go to the second component too and increase there. And as you can see, it's managing the two states separately, even though both of them are sharing states. But the state inside one component is different from the state inside another component. It's not using the same state. It's creating like a separate state for each of these components. So this is how to make use of HOC in your React application. Oh, we don't need use states here again. Let's remove the use states here. So then same thing here. Let me go for state again. So this is HOC. I will release another video on custom